Hello, friends and colleagues, and welcome to the Tourism Skillshop, hosted by State of Washington Tourism, SWT. My name is Matthew Ozuna, and I am the Destination Development Manager at SWT. I will introduce today's webinar on best practices for influencer agreements. Please utilize the chat and say hello. Let us know where you're zooming in from today. Feel free to share your comments throughout the entire webinar. And use the Q&A feature as well. Save your questions for, we'll address your questions near the end of the webinar, but feel free to drop them in the Q&A feature at any time. Marianne Graff will also be joining us today. She is the content manager at SWT. Marianne will monitor the chat and help address questions from the audience near the end of the webinar. Now, before we dive into influencer agreements today, I want to give you a little bit more information about this webinar series. The Tourism Skillshop is one of many educational programs from State of Washington Tourism. This webinar series will engage with colleagues across the tourism sector and broaden their industry knowledge, skill, and network. Each webinar will highlight a specific issue or skill for tourism professionals to ponder and discuss with industry experts. State of Washington Tourism will host live webinars of the Tourism Skillshop on the third or fourth Thursday of every month from 10 to 11 a.m. These webinars are free and open to all tourism stakeholders. The webinars will also be recorded and shared with registrants as well as other users on the SWT YouTube channel. For Tourism Skillshop and other industry updates, visit the SWT industry website, sign up for the industry update newsletter, and follow SWT on LinkedIn. Tourism stakeholders may also join the SWT Facebook group for further discussion on topics related to the Tourism Skillshop and other industry news, issues, and events. Now, let's dive into today's webinar. This webinar in the Tourism Skillshop will examine how to find social media influencers, how to contract with those influencers, and how to measure their ROI. Influencer marketing is the practice of leveraging individuals with a strong online presence who possess credibility or celebrity in their field to promote a product, service, or brand. As more businesses and destinations realize the many benefits associated with this form of marketing, influencers are becoming more prolific and mainstream. Today, webinar attendees learn how to craft influencer agreements that are clear, concise, and mutually beneficial for all parties. This webinar will feature industry experts with knowledge and experience in influencer marketing, contract negotiation, and destination promotion. They will share insights and examples regarding scope of work, compensation, confidentiality, and copyright in influencer agreements, among other contract details. I'm happy to introduce Andrea Rayburn, a tourism specialist at Idaho Tourism, focused on content and creative strategy, and Jolene Zanuzowski, the Director of Public Relations at Green Rubino, a creative marketing and PR agency headquartered in Seattle. Ladies, thank you for joining us today. This is new territory for me, so I have lots to learn. But before we dive into presentations, we have a little extra time. Jolene, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background?
Sure. So as Matt said, I'm the Director of PR at Green Rubino, and our team is really rooted in travel, tourism, and hospitality. That's really where we service most of our clients and work, and it's what we really enjoy. So we've been really grateful to work with State of Washington Tourism on their public relations efforts over the last couple of years, specifically bringing great media to this area. But we also have a really dynamic influencer marketing and content creator practice. So that's kind of a segment of our PR work that we do. We have developed a content creator network, which we're really proud of, which is a kind of trademarked piece of business that we do where we're asking and curating the best of the best creators in the region to be a part of our network. And also they're highly vetted. So we know that we've worked with them, that they deliver, and that they're trusted resources, specifically in travel, tourism, and hospitality. I've been really grateful to work with a host of different clients like Columbia Hospitality, Yakima Valley Tourism, Lake Chelan, Seattle South Side, which I see some of them in the call today, which I'm so excited. And I've been in this region. I grew up in the Tacoma area, started my career over in New York at Edelman, and then I came back to this region about 10 years ago. So I kind of coast hopped for a little bit, but I'm back here and I couldn't be more excited to work with State of Washington Tourism, and also for me to share what our team has worked on, and specifically in contracts, which we take very seriously over here, because we want to make sure that everyone gets the biggest bang for their buck and sees ROI for all of the great partnerships that are out there in the world.
Well said, Jolene. Thank you. I'm glad you're here. Looking to learn lots from you today. Andrea, what about you? Tell the audience about your background in Idaho.
For sure. So I'm Andrea Rayburn. I run content and creative strategy for Visit Idaho, which is Idaho Tourism's consumer-facing brand. I've been in this role for about 8 years, really focusing on those content creation collaborations, as well as owned editorial for our website, owned assets, photo development, video library curation, as well as collateral production. In my previous life, I was a TV news producer, so I love the storytelling aspect of what content creation does, and the really unique perspectives that it can bring to the table and help a lot of destinations leverage those unique stories to create special experiences for visitors. So really excited to talk about it today.
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you for joining us after your long journey across the United States, coming from an industry event conference in Savannah, Georgia. Marianne did the exact same thing. She's back in Bellingham. Some of you on the call might know Marianne as part of the SWT team. But Marianne, why don't you tell people a little bit more about your background and the work that you've been doing with influencers?
Sure thing. So I am SWT's content manager. I've been with the organization for about 1.5 years, and before that I was in digital marketing for a nonprofit museum. But what I'm really excited about in my role currently is we launched an influencer pilot program this year where we were working with 6 different creators. So I've actually learned a lot during that process, some of which I learned from Andrea during a conference last year. But it's been a really fun process, and I think it's very beneficial for not only our organization, but organizations of all sizes. So I'm excited to dive into that today with all of you.
Excellent. Thanks, ladies. Okay, Andrea, how about you start us off first? I understand you have some slides to share with us.
Sure. Let's get going. All right. Can everybody see that screen?
Yes, you're good to go.
Wonderful. So today we're going to talk about working with content creators and 5 tips that are going to make these collaborations work harder for you. To set things up, I do want to share that as Visit Idaho, we run all content collaborations through our office. We do not run them through an agency. This means we've run as many as 40 contracts through our office to generate all sorts of content to build brand awareness and engagement, including owned editorial, photography, video, social assets, etc. And I want you to know you can totally do this too. Our total team is 8 people. There is only one of me and 1 social media manager. So we are a small but mighty team. And again, I just want you to know you can take this and do this with a small team as well. One small disclaimer before we start, we're going to be talking about best practices for these agreements. But as a reminder, I am not a lawyer. I cannot give you legal advice. And I encourage you to seek out your own legal counsel to guide you through the contracting process. Excited to answer questions as we move along, so let's get started. In a vast sea of content creators, how do you get the most out of a content collaboration? And what I want to start with is why we call them content creators. Influence is earned, and it's something that comes naturally when you're working with someone who has compelling content and a unique perspective. So that's why when we're vetting out people, numbers aren't the whole entirety of the story. It's really important to dig into the other assets that these creators can make for you. So editorial, again, video, social content, and all of that combined is what creates powerful influence for your brand as well as the creator that you're working with. So tip 1, Don't make assumptions that you're speaking the same language. Clarity is king. You'd be surprised how many times you get into contract negotiations and discussions about a proposal, and you realize at one point you think you're talking about one thing and the creator thinks you're talking about something else. And then you'll end up in your contract and go, wait a minute, that wasn't right. So it's really important to take the time to assess what's being purchased. Do you know what B-roll is and why you want to buy it, or if you even need it? Are you receiving edited or unedited images when you're talking about buying images? Does a social video mean that it's including music or not including music? There is no dumb question, I promise you that. If you're unsure, just ask. Everybody wants to feel confident and transparent in the deal that they're putting together. So questions are the best thing you can do in this situation. Scope of work is your best friend. You want to iron out all the juicy details right here. And it's going to include a lot of details, but it'll be important to making sure that what you're receiving at the end of your agreement is what you really need. So we're going to look at some of the things you're wanting to include. So first up, this is going to feel like a silly one, but delivery dates. You're going to want to include an on or before X date. This is how you hold that creator accountable and make sure that you're getting that work delivered to you in a timely manner. For us here at Visit Idaho, we typically require that work is turned in 2 weeks after completion of trip, 3 weeks for video assets. Rounds of edits. This is a really important one. If you want to review and possibly edit a deliverable, which you should want to do, this covers social, video, and photography. Write into your scope of work how many rounds of edits you, as the client, will be entitled to as part of the process. Don't assume you'll be able to make changes once a deliverable lands in your lap. I can't tell you how many times this has actually saved us because there's either been an inaccuracy or just a flow of something that we just didn't really like. So these rounds of edits are important. Again, we include them in editorial, we include them in photography, we include them in video. Your licensing terms will also be included in your scope of work. You're going to want to be clear on how long you're allowed to use a deliverable, the space and medium you're allowed to use it in, if you have the ability to change or modify the work, if you have the ability to distribute and share the deliverables to partners and stakeholders as well. One thing when you're working with photo deliverables, I would recommend ironing out kind of what that review process is going to look like for you. It's not uncommon for a partner to have an idea of what a photo deliverable process will look like and a creator to have a different one. So make sure that you're ironing out, hey, I want to make sure that I see a gallery of 30 images, and from that gallery, I'm going to select my final 10 images that are contracted. Again, this just makes sure that you understand what you're getting and that the creator understands the expectation for them on what they're delivering. This is also where you're going to stick your reporting requirements. We all know ROI is really, really tough in this space. So make sure you iron out what you're hoping to see as this collaboration wraps up. So this is going to be some of your regular reporting details like views, likes, impressions, and engagements. But you can also ask for things that show the direct impact of this creator in your destination. So that's going to be screenshots of comments, screenshots of direct messages. It's really powerful to show your partners direct messages that have been sent to creators that said, I had no idea this unique property existed. I saw it on your page and I booked a trip right away. That you can turn around and show to your partners that there's a direct correlation between what you do and the work of these content creators and how it impacts the destination. And finally, money is always going to be part of it. So make sure you have the total cost of the agreement outlined here, as well as any items that are reimbursements. So all parties are clear on what fees will be covered. So for us, this is going to showcase a contract amount, and then we outline reimbursements such as airline flights, rental cars, and fuel. Licensing fees make the magic happen. Licensing fees just ensure that if you were hit by a bus, the rest of your team could clearly understand how your contracted deliverables could be used and actually use them. So here's a general gist of what you should include. Make your life easier and include brand identity and alignment. You'll see an example of this here on the screen. What that means is that one of the things that we do in our licensing agreements is we include all our color codes and specific details for brands so that when we get in this case, social deliverables turned over to us, they're already branded for us. Our team doesn't have to go in and do any additional work on the back end. So this is something that has been really handy. It speeds up the process for us as well. Our social media manager is top notch at doing this. And as a pro tip, she also has in our contracts written that each one of these social deliverables is to be included with music and without. So if you get caught up in a situation where you can't use the music, you still have an option to go and find your own music to run with that same piece of deliverable and not totally lose out on that opportunity. Again, you're going to want to have the duration of license. This applies to social deliverables as well. You're going to talk about licenses like in perpetuity, limited license, digital only. With small teams, don't be afraid to push for a perpetual license. It will often cost you more, which can be really tough with small teams, but it will make your life 100% easier and much easier to handle the assets. Right now, perpetuity can be a sticky conversation, but remember that you are allowed to advocate what is best for your business. You can find some wiggle room when you're negotiating licenses to play around with duration of license if someone is not able to give you the rights in perpetuity. You may be able to say, okay, well, we'll only do the rights in perpetuity for digital as opposed to print and digital. Or you may be able to negotiate for a 3 or 5 year license instead of a 1 year license. So make sure you play around with those terms. Again, this is a negotiation and it's okay to have that conversation. Non-exclusive or exclusive license. Obviously, having an exclusive license allows you to be the only entity with that image or asset, which can be super cool, but usually comes at a very steep price point. So do you truly need the exclusivity? We rarely contract for exclusive images. That's just one of our practices. It helps us manage our budget better. So if you don't need exclusivity, go ahead and move into a non-exclusive license and save that money to buy more assets. Again, distribution should be part of your conversation. You want to make sure that you have the rights to share the images with partners and media once that deliverable is received. You're going to want to address mediums of use. So again, this will be print, digital, digital only. Clearly identify the spaces you're buying for and that you'll want to use these assets. Again, it's better to make sure you have this all outlined up front than get caught on the back end with a little bit of a mix-up, not understanding which mediums were allowable. Credit versus no credit. So when you buy a photo or a video, you don't automatically become the entity associated with the credit. So make sure credit is outlined in your terms and in your scope of work. So it's clear who will be given credit and in what style. And when I say in what style, I mean, so in printed use, sometimes that's going to just be the creator's name. If you're using it in a digital space, oftentimes they'll ask for it to be done as a social handle. So they're tagged in the space where it's being used. Organic versus paid media usage. This is something that was new to us a couple years ago and kind of surprised us. So this is something, again, that we write into our licensing terms. If you want to use a super cool image or a video in an upcoming ad campaign, make sure that you are licensed to do so. Some creators will only allow use of materials in organic marketing and will not allow for any use in any paid efforts. So know which lane you're playing in to make sure that you are using those assets to the best of your ability. And then finally, talking about modifications of completed works. If someone delivers you a completed commercial, a YouTube video, a social video, etc., you are not guaranteed the right to repurpose the content from those completed works. If you want the right to modify or cut clips from a completed project, write it in your agreement. Tip number 4, itineraries put you in the driver's seat. This is your tool for building exceptional content. First and foremost, don't give every creator the same itinerary and expect different results. I know it can feel really challenging to come up with personalized itineraries when you're working with creators, but I can't emphasize this enough that your collaborations will be so much stronger and you take the time to personalize the itinerary for that creator, your results will be better, their experience will be better, and the overall product will be better. One of the things when you're working with a creator and putting together an itinerary, one of the questions that I love to ask, and I would encourage you to do the same, is to ask, what do you not like to cover or to do? This question isn't a disqualifying question in any way, shape, or form, but what it does is it helps better align the creator and the content and the partner for each collaboration. You don't want to be bringing someone in who says, I don't really like public art, and then put on their itinerary 3 hours of public art touring. You're not going to get what you want out of that collaboration. So again, just make sure everything is getting aligned. If you're requiring partner tagging as part of a project, which we love and we should be doing, add those partners' social handles and a note about required tagging to the itinerary for the creator. This will help avoid confusion on partner handles and if they have the right account, and it will help you avoid partner frustrations and make sure that the proper players are associated with the project. And number 5, buy the goods that make your life easier for you. I would recommend always to double down on your purchase. We very, very, very rarely write an agreement for one deliverable, especially when it comes to like owned editorial. We typically will write in contracts that are 2, 3, or 4 pieces of content as a way to build up our library. With this practice in play, we've been able to build up a running content library that sits with about 30 articles that are evergreen at any point in time. So again, if I were to be hit by a bus, we could still do content for several months without running into any issue. I would encourage people to look at rolling and/or ongoing contracts as your friend. And so what do I mean by an ongoing contract? This is going to be partnering up with a creator to do work on a reoccurring schedule. So if you know a great food content creator in your area, get together with them and have them create a reel every month about new restaurants that pop up. And then that guarantees you that content for 3 months or for 6 months or for a year. Is there a great dog-friendly adventure creator that you've spotted? Contract them to craft dog-friendly adventure pieces for you for each season. So that's a 12-month contract that they'll deliver on a specific timeline. And again, it just ensures that you're getting multiple pieces over the duration of a year to help you build that library. And as always, don't be afraid to walk away. I know this is super hard. It can feel like sometimes you really need to give them the world. And again, you want it to be personalized. You want it to be a special experience. So they're seeing the best of your destination and they're showing off the best of your destination. But sometimes, especially with a small team, it's okay to just say it doesn't work. These partnerships should be beneficial for everyone. So don't be afraid to say, right now it doesn't work. Maybe we can talk again in 3 months or in 6 months. And just keep those conversations open. These are real people. It is a business transaction, but it is real people. And so these relationships are important, and being honest that maybe this just isn't the time is okay. So that's kind of a quick little summary of scope of work and some things that I would encourage you to do as you are working with content creators.
Thanks, Andrea. Marianne, did you have anything to add?
No, that was wonderful. I will kind of reiterate a couple of her points just based on my experience with the pilot program this year. I think edits are very important, or at least having eyes on the content. Sometimes they don't need a lot of changes. Sometimes there are inaccuracies or misspellings, especially if in some of our communities, you want to just be very careful that we're not, we have no typos in there. We have no inaccuracies. And that handles are correct. You don't want to accidentally having them tag a account that has a very similar name as yours or something like that. And then also in terms of packages, like what Andrea said, is think about it in terms of what you need now, but also what you may need in the future. So maybe right now your focus is on video storytelling. So you're trying to go in after TikToks or Reels, but your longer term goal is also to, boost your photo or asset library. So incorporate some stills into that, incorporate a blog post if you're trying to drive website traffic. You know, a lot of the conversation right now is around social assets and video, but you can always incorporate pieces for your own website or their websites. If they have a large audience in your target market, they can backlink to you and they can share with their own audiences directly and reach an entire different demographic. So those are just a couple additional notes.
Yeah, I wrote down a question about edits. I mean, I guess when are too many edits take away from like the creative nature of the deliverable, or how much does editing kind of stifle creativity? Have you run into that kind of awkward dynamic, Andrea or Jolene?
In our particular case, I would say it usually isn't an issue. We typically set up like a creative brief with our creators before they go out into the field to give them a light framework for what they're going to be covering. So we know before they go out that they're going to be doing the top 10 things to do around Boise this weekend. But we do leave that framework light so that way their creativity comes through. There's a reason they have an audience and a following, and we don't want to negate their voice or the way that people connect with them. Typically for us, our standard round of edits is 2. I've seen around, for some larger contracts, we'll do 3, and those are going to typically be with really high volumes of completed works. So if we're getting a lot of social video or a lot of YouTube shorts, etc. So I would say it's not an issue for us as long as you build it correctly on the front end.
And I totally agree with that. I think you're going in, letting them speak to their audience and their voice. That's why you're working with them, is because they have a engaged following. And so it's mostly for us, at least, an accuracy thing, just as like spell checking, you know, making sure it does reflect kind of like the itinerary we set up or the tone that we had discussed. And we do put in the contract as well that like you're here on behalf of our destination. So like you should be reflecting it in a positive light. So that kind of helps prevent them just being, oh, like I hated this restaurant that we went to. Like that's not going to slip in when you kind of have that language in the contract as well.
I'll add to that too. When you're starting out at the beginning of your year, or whenever your marketing budget kind of starts, or whenever you kind of figure out what you're working with, what are those goals you have to position your destination? Is it outdoor adventure? Is it culinary? Is it wine? What is it? And look for those creators and influencers at the onset, those that you're really excited to work with, and you already love the content that they're producing. They fit a similar style messaging. They're going to create really dynamic content for you. That's going to eliminate some of this work, and also it develops a trust because you've been following these people. We have so many, I personally follow so many creators that I just love what they're producing, and I could see them. I'm like, this would be an amazing creator to work with for this destination or this hotel. So you kind of already have that work done just based on your personal knowledge and following those people. Also using really great vetting tools. There's a ton out there. Some of them are free. We use a tool called For, which is not free, but there's some that are out there that are free that can vet to see if there's authentic followings and if there's not a bunch of bots commenting. So you can kind of vet and see if those are the people you want to be working with from the onset, and if they fit your brand and your destination's message.
Excellent. Thanks, Jolene. Yes, I assume there was a lot more work or research involved with this. And I think you'll probably get to that in your slides. You're up next, and you have a slide deck for us, don't you?
I do. I will pull it right up. All right. How does that look?
Looks great. Go right ahead.
Excellent. All right. So Andrea talked about more of the content. I'm going to talk more about the contracts, which are a huge part of getting the right type of content that you're looking to do and that you're looking to achieve to really maximize that partnership. So when you're putting together your contract, and Andrea, when you're saying scope of work, is that what you're calling your contract? I was curious on that part.
That's the same thing. Referring to scope of work as part of the contract. We have an actual contract body that has all our legalese in it, and then the scope of work really gets down to the nitty-gritties of the actual process for us.
Got it. Perfect. Okay. So there could be two different contract pieces. So in the contract that has all of the deliverables that you'll do, you need a contract 100% of the time. That is a given. And it doesn't matter if it's a friend of a friend or a cousin that has a YouTube channel of 1 million people, or your neighbor. Everyone needs a contract, no matter if you know them since you were 5 years, you've known them since you were 5 years old. Everyone needs a contract. So it's just a part of the process. Even if you're doing a trade partnership, you're not actually, there's not money for content. If you're doing a trade, which we always try to look at new creators out in the space, our team has a really great database of creators that are kind of up and coming, or micro or nano creators, which are really great ways for destinations that might not have a huge budget to work with to engage some creators and kind of dabble without spending actual dollars. You might spend money on the hotel partner or meals or something within the destination, but it's not a paid, here's $1,500 for photography. There's tons of photographers too that'll work, but regardless of the partnership terms, trade or paid, you always want that contract in place because it really sets the tone, as Andrea said before. Define those clear parameters. What is the focus? What is the goal? What's the intention? Is this a creator you're working with that's really going to shine on your dynamic wine destination? Is this a creator that's really going to focus on your LGBTQ offerings and how welcoming you are as a destination to the LGBT community? So what does that look like? You want to make sure you're really clear. And Andrea kind of touched on that too, but during that contracting phase, build those pieces in, those key messages, those key points that you want them to hit on. You should have a standard template for your organization's contract. You shouldn't be recreating a contract as you're going on. You should be customizing it, of course, but you should have a standard template. I'm going to show you what we use for the clients that we work with and the creators we work with. And I'm happy to share that contract for people to use after this. So that's something that's not segment to us and the clients that we work with. I'm happy to share that template contract for you to repurpose if you'd like. And as Andrea said, I'm not a lawyer, so have it run through your legal if you would like to. And then some creators, they have their own contracts or they work with agencies. This is a new big frontier of people making lots of money creating content these days. This is a very new industry in the grand scheme of things. So there are agencies that are specifically dedicated to creators and influencers. So sometimes when you reach out to a creator, their agent will write back and say, let's talk. Any creator that's working with an agent, their fees are going to be a bit higher. There's going to be a markup because that agent has to be paid, right? So just know that from the onset that maybe if you are working with a creator directly, it might be a $3,500 partnership. With an agency, it could be upwards of $7,500 to $10,000 because the agency is getting a cut of that. So just loop that in. One word I love to say when agencies are involved or agents are involved with creators is to schedule a time to talk to them on the phone directly with the creator. So you're not just working with that agent. There's something lost in translation we found there. So a best practice is to always ask if you can have a Zoom or a one-on-one call with the creator that you're trying to contract with. And then they're human beings. Andrea said this too. These are people. This isn't, you don't treat them as assets or don't treat them as assets or people that are just for hire and then you're done with them after. These are really talented creatives. So please treat them like that. It's a partnership. It's not a transaction. Sometimes when we're working with creators and we have a client or someone will say like, well, why are we just doing stories? We want a reel. I would ask the people in the audience, maybe put in the chat, have you made a reel and realized how much time a reel takes to make versus posting static stories? A reel or a video is a piece of video content. So the time intensive nature of reels or YouTube videos or TikTok videos is a huge difference. And those are generally going to be more expensive pieces of collateral for you to purchase. So just know when you're asking that content isn't interchangeable. So when a creator comes back with your contract and they say, for $2,000, here's what we can provide you. Well, what about this? Can you throw this in there? And what you're trying to throw in there could be a huge ask for a creator. Time is money. So just understand what you're asking for and build the humanity into that ask a bit. Then I will say when our most successful partnerships are those where people have became kind of friendlies of our team, of our clients, and then we always get added value out of that. Sometimes they'll throw in additional bonus content because they had such a great time at the hotel or the destination. They felt really passionate about a piece of their experience. Maybe they had a really great interview with a winemaker. They had a really great time at a hotel that was pet friendly, or they were really accessible to a community. So that can make a huge difference. So understand that being a nice person can go a long way. And you all are nice people, I know that. So that should be easy. All right, so kind of the 3 key steps. This is how we approach contract negotiation. Like I said before, identify those goals. So when you look at your marketing goals for your destination or your hotel or your attraction, your restaurant, whoever you're representing, really look at what are you trying to do and what do you need? Do you need photos? Do you need more video content? Are you trying to grow your social presence on Instagram and grow followers? Just general awareness of a new destination, or maybe there's a really cool new museum in your destination you're trying to drive traffic to, or there's a new taco trail that you just launched, whatever it is. Figure out what you're trying to do, and your creators will be easily, those are your targets. That's who you're trying to reach out to. And that's what should be in your contract too, that type of collateral and how much budget you have to go after them. Schedule a call with the creator, like I said before. This is money. This is such a time saver. Email back and forth, negotiate on email. It's a lot of time. So I always recommend a Zoom call, 30 minutes, hash out what they're looking for, where they think they can be highest and best use to your destination or what you're trying to do. Talk through it. That has made a huge difference. That's a huge part of our process, is that call. And like I said, if you're working through an agent of a creator, the call should be with the creator, not with the agent. So the agent can show up if they'd like to, that's fine, but make sure you have that direct conversation. I can't tell you how many times people have said, well, we went back on email, I thought we were negotiating and put everything in the contract. I sent them the contract. Then they came back and they said, I don't want any of this. I don't want to do these things. This is too expensive. That's going to be another $1,000. You only get 5 photos versus 10 photos. I don't want to do a reel. That could have all been hashed out on a call. And it sounds so simple, right? But some people are very phone averse. So I always say use the phone as much as you can. All right, draft and finalize the contract. So one round of negotiations is kind of our sweet spot. So it's a little bit different. Andrea said the kind of 2 rounds for content is what they do. So I'd be interested to hear maybe when we do Q&A for the contract piece, what that usually looks like. But and sometimes if you've done all that work ahead of time and kind of gone through steps 1 and 2, you'll send the contract, they'll sign it, and it's done, and you're on your way. You have all of that goodness built in. You're on your way to doing the really fun work. Let's click. There we go. All right, so I wanted to do a little case study, if you will. So we have worked with a lot of creators with Lake Chelan. An outdoor adventure is an area of opportunity or growth for Lake Chelan. Obviously, there's tons of outdoor things to do in Chelan, but a lot of people think of Chelan as lake activities, which is outdoors, but what else is there? Or they think of wine, or they think of family friendly. So outdoor adventure was an area of opportunity. So we identified this really great creator, Allison Wolf. She has a handle called Wolves and Waterfalls. Really great following on TikTok specifically, with about over 250,000 followers. We really liked her whole vibe from a demographic perspective. She's based in the Northwest, but she's kind of one of those traveling nomad type of creators, which you'll find a lot, is they not really rooted anywhere because they're out collaborating and making money all year long. So we identified her as being someone that was a great fit to work with Chelan. So just based on really great engagement on her videos, we really looked at consistency of engagement too. She had a lot of videos that were seen over 300,000 times, traveled all around the world, and it was very outdoor focused, which we liked. All right, so after going through all those steps that I talked about, we identified Chelan's kind of overall goals of what we wanted to focus on, the outdoor adventure. We moved in, we talked to Allison a couple times about what she wanted to experience and what that looked like. Then we moved into the contract phase. So this is a general contract. I've taken out some of the pricing and the specific details of the contract, but you'll get the idea of what we include. From there, you have the typical kind of upfront of what the campaign's trying to achieve. 3 nights, what's hosted, that's very important. You're hosting things like hotels or meals. We have a shot list that we attach as an addendum if there's specific photos that we're asking for as a part of their deliverable. And that addendum is key. So we'll have a list of kind of what we're looking for and those messages, social media handles, all that good stuff. How long the partnership will last, that's how long they're in market, how long they're on boots on the ground to do the work, and then what the fee is, how they're compensated. An additional piece of this is if you're compensating for mileage, room and board, like I said, gas, any of those other things, that should be detailed. Whatever those ancillary expenses are, for sure include those, and that'll be part of your negotiation. There's always questions that we ask creators from the upfront when it comes to those expenses. Also questions like, are you bringing a child with you for this visit? Are you bringing your spouse? Are you bringing a dog? All of those things that can happen is, I know people experience, there's this surprise dog that shows up on the visit, and maybe your destination isn't super pet friendly. So you want to just solve for all of those things again in those initial conversations and vetting. Then we get into the content piece. This one's pretty straightforward. So 2 video posts, 1 video reel. Again, putting in what handles you expect the content to go live on. If you're building in a review process, as Andrea said, that review process should be in here as well. 1 round of reviews, changes, 2 rounds of reviews, whatever you're looking for, and then all the legalese. So, and we've had our lawyer that our agency works with look at all of our contracts too. Okay, that's a brief overview on the contract. So after the contract's done, you've had a great content partnership, how do you maximize that return on investment? You spent all of this money, or maybe you had a really great trade agreement. How are you really making sure you're getting that bang for your buck on this? So list of social handles, we always have an addendum. Every partner, we use Travify, which I know some of the destinations on this call do as well. We build in the social handles into that itinerary, which is key. There should always be an itinerary, as Andrea said, so I'll echo that piece of advice and include all that information. But in addition to Travify, we'll have an addendum to the contract with all the partners' handles on it, and also contact information too. This second point I really like to emphasize, and I have a broadcast journalism background, so this might be where this comes from, is treat this visit and lining up this content like it's a TV news shoot. Line up interviews for your creator. Maybe there's a really dynamic restaurant owner that is such a great ambassador for your destination, and everyone on this call knows who your people are for your destination, that sing your destination's praises, or maybe it's a really great hotel GM that you've worked with, or a great outfitter, or a fly fishing guide, or whatever it may be. Have those people at the ready, because those are going to be the people that really make the content sing. They can build in a soundbite into your content. There's been some really successful partnerships that had involved really fun interviews or things like that. So that's another element too, is kind of have that at the ready and treat it like a TV news segment, because ultimately that's what we're trying to, like the Today Show, but on Instagram or TikTok. And it's these cute little snippets that are super creative and interesting. And then this is so simple, but I always like to say it, is send a thank you. Have your partners send thank yous. If you're so proud of the content that's being provided and you're really excited about it and it got great engagement, or maybe you saw a huge uptick in followers on your social channels, or maybe you saw a direct result in business or hotel occupancy, some of those direct drivers that we're always looking for, please thank those creators. I mean, you're thanking them with a check, obviously. That's like Don Draper says, like that's what the money's for. But also thank them with a thank you or a note or a nice gift after, just to be like, we can't wait to have you back. That goes so far. A great example, one of the hotels that we work with in Palm Springs, they had a really great pet friendly creator that they worked with, their pet friendly property there. And they worked with the creator a couple different times, and the GM sent thank you notes and sent really nice kind of like local dog treats to them. And she came back just to do a fully hosted stay. This is a dog that has 1 million followers on Instagram, for a free stay and free content. So something that they would have charged like $3,500, $5,000 for, just by being engaged and saying thank you, it was amazing. And their guests with pets, it jumped like a crazy percentage, like 70% last year or something. And they're directly correlating it to this visit. So there are some really great tangibles that you can find by just saying thank you and being a kind person. All right. So just some other pieces. Going back to the wolves and waterfalls piece really quickly. From Chelan, this was really cool. So what happened was, this was one of the videos that she posted. These are kind of some of the comments we're always looking for, people saying, let's go. This TikTok that she developed got really great engagement, almost 500 comments. And this was taken like probably, a few days after it went live. So I'm sure it was a little bit higher than this too. Put the messaging in there, all the hashtags, the tag of the destination. The messaging was prevalent, really great engagement on this one. More TikTok content, as you can see. Someone saying, I want this whole adventure. I've still never been to Chelan. Someone saying, I finally made it here in January. I still pinch myself. The beauty of this place all around is breathtaking. So someone saying, can you share where you stayed? My kid's birthday is coming. I love this. So these are things that are what we see as success, is active engagement, and really great dynamic conversations about the destination that are happening organically. And then her Instagram content also took off. This was great. Again, really positive comments, people saying they love this spot. She included some really great tangible information like pricing. She did a link tree, which linked to some of the destinations, which is a great tip for content, is to asking your creator to put a link in their Instagram bio with links to purchase or links to book a room. So that's always something that you can add in too. With pricing, kind of what the experiences are. She had a whole list of things that she did in Chelan that were here, and tagging each of the partners. All right, well, I got it.
Thank you so much, Joanne. That was a great addition to Andrea's presentation. I think there's been a lot of ground covered. When we were talking about negotiation and what you can afford and stuff, there's one thing I also wanted to bring up is there is some room to go back after, for example, we worked with one of my favorite content creators based out of Spokane, the Mandigees. They did a big road trip through like wine country and up into East Washington. And they gave us, we had said we were going to see selects of photos, and then we were going to select like, I think 8 photos for a blog post. We saw their photo library and we're like, oh my God, we want all of these. And so we went back to them and we said, these are just so beautiful. We would love to add these to our asset library and use them on social media to really highlight like the eastern side of the state. Can we add like an amendment to our contract saying that we would like to purchase like X additional images, non-exclusive, so like we don't own the full rights to them. It wasn't incredibly more expensive, and sometimes when you do like a bulk batch of images, you can even get a discount depending on what the creator is willing to do. And so we did go back and we did purchase more images than we originally had intended to, and I'm so happy that we did. So that was just another fun way to, continue to shift and change as the collaboration unfolds.
Yeah, that's a great point. The other piece of it too is to have an out clause in your contract. I forgot to mention that. And that is we've never had this happen before. We've never needed to use it. If your creator has a bad experience and they feel that they don't want to cover maybe one of the businesses that they visited, or there's something going there where we're advocating for that creator in that space, where obviously we're going to work with that partner and say, hey, what happened? But there's an out clause where you would pay them like a small percentage of the fee for their visit, but you don't have to pay them for the content. So you have an out clause. You don't need to pay for the full contract agreement, but you are paying them for their time when they were in the destination, and also their trouble if there was something that happened. There's a creator team, Traveling While Black, which I know State of Washington Tourism worked with this year. And they have an out clause in every contract that they have. And that's to say if they feel like they're going to give a lower rating for a destination, because they rate destinations 1 through 10 for comfortability for Black people or Black travelers.
1 through 5.
1 through 5. 1 through 5. 1 through 5. And if it's anything, I think, less than, then they will say, listen, the destination actually wasn't something we'd be comfortable sharing with our followers. So they have an out clause in there. So you'll see that sometimes if creators are sharing their own contract, but you should build it into your contracts if you feel like maybe your destination is the beginning stages as far as hospitality goes. You know, there's some pieces where maybe you have a new destination that isn't, and when I say hospitality, I don't mean something like maybe it's just not accessibility is an issue, or there's a lot of construction going on and it's not as visually presentable. There could be a lot of things, right?
So yeah, weather related as well. Yeah,
weather related. They just had a bad experience, or, you know, they came across a really salty barista. I don't know. It could be a lot of things. So you just want to make sure you're covering your ground there. The other thing is liability waivers as well. I touched on this a bit, but if you have a really active itinerary, zip lining, rock climbing, any of those things, liability waivers are key. So make sure that you have that's an additional contract to your core content contract. And that'll cover your bases there if a creator is to get injured while they're on visit. That hasn't, I'm going to knock on my standing desk wood surface right now. That has never happened. So, or never need to be used, but just a good safety measure to have in place.
Yeah, that's a good point too, Jolene. And one thing before we can like open it up to Q&A, or Matt, maybe you have some questions as well, is like back to Andrea's point, like you can work with creators. Like there are so many levels of creators with different sized followings and different levels of engagement. And like, if you find someone that you love, just like reach out to them and, you know, kind of shoot your shot and see if they would be open to even starting at like a small package or something like that. Like you just never know unless you ask, unless you make that step. One of my like favorite collaborations we did this year was with an influencer who had under 10,000 followers on Instagram. And I think at the time, 30,000 or so followers on TikTok. But the content that she created on TikTok has seen 500,000 views on some of the pieces that she created for us. And she even gave us bonus content because we had just such a fun time working together. So you just never know. Just go for it.
Wow. Yeah. Marianne, I'm going to echo some of what you just said. But first, let me thank Jolene. Great presentation. I appreciated the examples, Jolene. Thank you. Okay, folks, we have 5 minutes left. So this is time for audience members to ask questions of our panelists. As those come in, I didn't see any right off the bat. Correct me if I'm wrong, Marianne. Okay, great. Well, maybe I can kind of tee up the panelists and get the conversation going and engage with our attendees. Marianne, you mentioned reaching out to influencers and different types of influencers based on audience size or followers. And so, Jolene, you also mentioned that when an agency is involved with an influencer, the price usually goes up too. Just to kind of, for our audience and for my sake too, does the price of deliverables or of the entire contract, what have you, does that go up with a macro influencer with a huge following, and then it kind of the price diminishes as we go down to micro and nano influencers? What's the breakdown, or does it just depend on like deliverables? Is there kind of a standard cost to make a video content or a blog across the board?
Yeah, so the content package is going to dictate the cost. If a creator has an agent, then the cost is going to be, there's a percentage that agent's taking out of that fee. And usually when there's an agent involved, we've worked both ways where they've accepted our contract and it's been fine, but usually they'll have a contract they'll share with us. So we really scrutinize contracts that are coming from the outside, because usually there's hidden fees in there. They'll try to have us pay for additional things like, I don't know, if your flight's delayed, then we have to pay for an additional room night in the destination or things like, there's like added things in there too, which sometimes we'll consider, but we just really scrutinize those a bit more. for the size of audience, which I know is always a key driver for people, but I challenge that. We really do challenge that at Green Rubino, because we see some really exciting creators, especially on TikTok or that are doing Instagram Reel video content, that might have 4,000 followers, but we see that their content's being viewed millions of times, like millions of views on videos. So I really encourage people, we really encourage people to don't look at that follower count as much. Sometimes people get stuck on that. Well, they only have 4,000 followers. But with TikTok and Instagram, with the algorithm, you don't need to be following a creator to see their content, especially if it goes viral. So I really encourage people to look beyond it. I really look at views. That's the metric I really focus on, is the views of content. That's why I really like Reels and TikTok for that, because I can see how many people are actually seeing things.
Oh, excellent. Good to know. Andrea, did you have anything to add about that?
No, I think the ladies covered it, but again, yeah, a lot of it depends on the content package and what you're doing. Video is going to cost more than photography typically. Again, if I buy B-roll because that's part of what we do in building up our asset library, and that is always going to be more expensive. So again, knowing what your goals are and what your needs are is really important before you enter into those contracts.
Okay, folks, I have one more question. I don't see any questions coming in, so
Matt, actually, someone did ask if we would
perfect.
be able to share links or an example to a contract template. And I believe, Jolene, you had mentioned earlier that you would possibly be willing to do that with your contract. Is that something we can share out to those who have registered when we follow up, Matt?
Sure. Yeah, if that's okay with Jolene.
Of course,
right.
Yeah, we'd be happy to share a template.
And also, there was another question that just came in. Do you have tips to get people to look beyond those vanity metrics of creators, so like follower count? And I think going back to what Jolene and Andrea have both said, it's like engagement. Engagement rate is becoming like the new, better metric to look at in terms of, authenticity and impact. And so instead of being like, oh, they have so many followers, or oh, that type of thing, it's like, how many shares, how many, saves, and you can see a lot of that on TikTok, which is great. Like you can kind of just see at a glance how that content's performing, but I would always look for engagement as the best metric. And Jolene and Andrea, if you have anything to add to that.
I would say sometimes too, especially if you're looking for editorial, obviously you're going to do a deep dive on what someone is creating, but ask for their analytics for the last 30 days from their website so you can see time on page. If editorial is something that's really important to you, go ahead and ask for that information. They're running a business. They should happily share that information with you. We have creators that have made content for us that have an average time on page of 7 to 8 minutes just because of how good their writing is. So again, don't discount kind of the old school stuff. There's a lot of value in that, as well as those beautiful social deliverables.
I echo that. Same. Everything's been said. I agree.
Yeah, and I don't see any additional comments or questions in the chat or the Q&A. So I think this might be a great place to wrap.
Yeah, folks. I mean, we went a little long in the presentation. I know some of you might have to sign off and attend an 11 o'clock meeting. I mean, if we just have another minute or two, I'm trying to think of some of the small businesses and smaller DMOs across the state. And you don't have to work for a DMO to contract with an influencer, but I'm trying to kind of figure out how other folks within the tourism ecosystem can utilize influencer marketing. And if those small businesses like a hotel or restaurant or attraction can't contract outright directly with an influencer, could they go through the local tourism office? And what could they bring to the table? For instance, a comp. I could provide a stay at my hotel, or a meeting, like you said earlier, Jolene, an interview with a local tour guide that's knows everything about this destination. How do other folks, businesses on a budget, get to work with influencers and the local tourism office? How do all those entities come together and a contract signed? Do you have any experience with that? Or Jolene, or excuse me, Andrea, in Idaho, do you do something with the smaller rural communities or businesses?
Our partners are definitely a key part of this. That dialogue is always open, but again, it's about matching up the creator and the partners. We want those to feel aligned, because a partner is going to not feel great if they're paired with someone who doesn't maximize their potential. So keep those conversations open, like Jolene has said. Let people know who's coming, and when content is running, those are really important conversations to continue to have. And get your list of people who are ready to play and want to engage. And don't forget, there's a lot of value in people just being able to see a destination. We work a lot, and have been working a lot on accessibility. And one of the things that continues to come up is that show me the space, show me the place. So there's a lot of value in having someone come in and just present tours and options to showcase someplace, as opposed to a bunch of random photos on a booking website that may not really give the true character and charm of a location.
I agree with that. And I'd also say, I mean, we work with restaurants and a lot of small businesses, just as our work here collectively at Green Rubino. And one thing we always kind of counsel them on is keeping their social channels active, because then creators will reach out to them if they see that they have really dynamic social presence, or there's an amazing donut they're making or something. And you see, I mean, I look at a donut and I immediately want to go to wherever that donut is. That's just me. But they'll say, okay, great, I want to go to that place or that small business. I want to check that out and I want to support them. There's a great creator here in Seattle, Connor Kaysen of Find Me in Seattle. And he's always looking for ways to support businesses, especially for businesses of all in the international district, businesses that have been impacted in some way, like really that goodness piece, and tell their stories. And he does that for no charge, where so there's always ways to tell your story on a trade perspective, and you can reach out to them and say, hey, we've really been struggling. There's a YouTube creator, I'm forgetting his name, but people reach out to him because their businesses are struggling, and then he goes and visits these restaurants, and then they blow up. It's near Vegas, and I'm forgetting his name right now. Yes.
Yep.
Yes. And so, I mean, a great follow. And I have been emotionally moved by that content, watching it, because these small business owners have been so successful just based on a TikTok video of him eating whatever they're serving. So there's so many ways for small businesses to not have to pay a dime to a creator, just offer their experience and their talent to them, and their return can be really impactful.
Excellent. Marianne, any last words of wisdom?
I think we've said most of it, so I think that we can wrap.
Okay, excellent, folks. Well, attendees, thank you for joining us today on the Skillshop. Tune in next month in September for a webinar, Skillshop, on film tourism with Washington Filmworks. So more details to come. Stay tuned and follow the industry newsletter. Okay, thanks, and we'll see you again soon.